So here's a question for you. How do you tell the story of someone that history has basically tried to erase? That's what we're diving into today. We're going to look at how a historical novel can take just a tiny handful of facts and use them to bring a forgotten life back from the brink, giving a voice to a woman who was silenced, wow, over 370 years ago. All right, let's get right into the heart of this mystery. We're talking about a real person, a real woman, who was executed for witchcraft, and yet history has almost completely forgotten her. It's like she's just vanished. So her name was Margaret Jones. And, well, she holds this really grim distinction. Get this, she was the very first person executed for witchcraft in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, hanged right in Boston on June 15th, 1648. But who was she, as a person? The thing is, the historical record it's almost totally silent. The author who wrote this novel about her life, she found that Margaret was little more than, and I'm quoting here, a maligned blip in punitive court documents. I mean, think about that. A name, a date, and a punishment. That's it. That's all that was left of her entire life. You can imagine, right? This is a huge, huge challenge for any writer. I mean, how do you build a whole world, a whole life, a tragedy from practically nothing? How do you even begin to fill in those massive and frankly dangerous gaps in what we actually know? So, how do you solve a problem like that? Well, what the author did is really interesting. Instead of trying to build the story just around Margaret, she built it around her marriage. This was a brilliant move. The whole narrative is centered on the private world and the deep bond between Margaret and her husband, Thomas. So Thomas, he becomes our witness. We get to see Margaret through the eyes of someone who loved her. And that means the core tragedy isn't just the trial itself, it's the complete shattering of their relationship. It becomes this incredible study of loyalty under the most extreme pressure you can imagine. And you have to remember the world they're living in. This deeply personal story is set against the backdrop of 17th century Puritan Boston. We're talking about a society of rigid piety, nonstop gossip, and just intense public scrutiny. Being different wasn't just frowned upon, no, it was downright dangerous. And this is where it gets really chilling, because it illustrates the central conflict perfectly. Every single one of Margaret's greatest strengths, the very things that made her special and valuable, they were all systematically twisted into evidence against her. Her skill as a healer? Nope, that was a malignant touch. Her sharp, astute observations? Suddenly that's uncanny knowledge. Her outspoken personality? That becomes an incessant demonic mouth. And her skills with herbs and medicines, well, that was obviously proof she was having communion with the devil. Her competence was literally her crime. Okay, so let's get to the trial. This is where the novelist just masterfully blends the handful of known facts with some really powerful and honestly terrifying fiction. We're going to start with the cold, hard facts. This line here comes directly from Governor John Winthrop's own journal. From May 1648, he ordered that a strict watch be set about her every night. I mean, just think about that. This wasn't an investigation to find the truth. No, this was a legal order that basically presumed she was guilty from the get-go. So the novel takes that one single, cold line from a journal and transforms it into this absolutely terrifying human experience. You see the brutal sleep deprivation. You learn about the witch pricker, this awful, fraudulent tool they used to fake finding the devil's mark on her skin. And in this exhausted, feverish state, she has a vision of her dead child, Bess. It's a moment of just profound, heartbreaking grief, but of course, the court sees it as something supernatural. So here's the crucial point. Every single piece of evidence brought against her was a complete distortion of reality. A guy claims her medicine made his wife a wanton slut? Margaret had a perfectly clinical herbal explanation for its effects. An accuser says her evil fingers killed a newborn? The tragic truth was that the baby was born with a birth complication. And when the court claimed some demonic familiar, a cat, appeared in her cell, it was just her own pet cat, Molly, who'd found her way to her. Everything, her expertise, human tragedy, even simple affection, was twisted into proof of witchcraft. But you know what? Margaret's story doesn't actually end at the gallows. It continues on through her husband, Thomas. It's all about a promise he made, a promise that would completely change the rest of his life. Okay, so picture this. In their final, absolutely heart-wrenching night together, Thomas confesses his own failings to her. And that's when Margaret reveals a secret she has carried for years and years. She has a daughter, Constance, who she was forced to give up for adoption long ago back in England. This one revelation, it just transforms everything for Thomas. His grief turns into a mission. After Margaret is executed, he's a total outcast. But instead of just running away, he vows he will find Constance. The story then follows his whole journey to England, and in 1650, he does it. He finds her, and he offers her a new life, a chance to finally know the real truth about her mother. It's this incredibly powerful, redemptive journey, all dedicated to keeping Margaret's true legacy alive. So, after all that, what are we supposed to take away from this powerful blend of history and fiction? Why does Margaret's story from so long ago still matter so much right now? Well, for one thing, the novel uses this one-woman story to explore the absolutely terrifying consequences of a society that's just driven by fear, by hypocrisy, and by paranoia. It's a really stark reminder of what can happen when the public performance of faith becomes way more important than actual empathy and truth. And second, it's really a testament to the power of storytelling itself, right? The power to reclaim and humanize people who have been silenced by history. By giving Margaret a voice, this story acts as a kind of narrative vindication for so many other people who were persecuted just for being different. Which kind of leaves us with this one final thought to chew on. When a society starts punishing its healers, its knowledgeable women, its nonconformists, what sickness is that society really revealing about itself? And that's a question that, believe me, echoes far, far beyond 17th century Boston.